A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I am so excited today because I am joined by Jon Dick. He is the Vice President of Marketing at HubSpot. Jon, how are you today?
Hey, Logan. How's it going?
I am doing fantastic. Great to have you on the show again, Jon. We are going to be digging into a research report that you guys recently went through and shared some insights on your blog. Excited to find out some of the things that you guys unpacked in some of that data. Before we do, though, Jon, give us a little bit of background for audience members who aren't familiar with you. Obviously, for our audience, HubSpot doesn't need a ton of introduction, but why don't you share a little bit about yourself and what you and your team at HubSpot are up to these days?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's always good to join you guys on this program. So thanks for having me back. And for all the listeners out there, I've been at HubSpot for just over 2 years now. And before coming to HubSpot, I was actually at a B2C company called Trunk Club, which was a men's and now women's retailer, eventually acquired by Nordstrom. And before that, I worked for social media analytics company Klout. I don't know if you remember the Klout score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah. So I ran marketing at Klout and had a lot of fun. That was a really great company. So I've had a couple different lenses on marketing. Klout was B2C and B2B. It was kind of a two-sided platform that connected marketers and influencers, went to market, B2C. Trunk Club was totally B2C, and HubSpot, of course, is B2B. And one of my big observations, and the reason I got really excited about joining the HubSpot team was not only just because I happen to think that the marketers have had the chance to interact with at HubSpot are just really progressive, which I find really motivating to learn from. But also, I think B2B and B2C marketing are merging a lot. And if you think about like classic B2B tactics, right? Like the most classic is lead capture. And I can't think of a B2C e-commerce website that I've been to in the last 2 years that didn't have a lead form on it. Trying to capture email addresses. And so that was just kind of an observation I was having. And that was a lot of what motivated me to join HubSpot. And a lot of my team's, mission at HubSpot is really evolving and changing our go-to-market to align with the way that people shop and buy. To really try and pull friction out of our flywheel as a company to make it really easy for people to do business with HubSpot. And so a lot of what we've researched and what I'll talk about today and share really is based on that idea that we can make it easier for people to do business with us, and that'll be a huge part of how we grow in 2018 and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if anything's true today of both B2B and B2C is that there's one way that buyers buy from you, and that's in the way that they want to. So anything that we can do as marketers and salespeople and customer service professionals to reduce friction is going to be in our best interests. So let's dive in right there, Jon. I think that's a great segue. So you guys recently did a research report on go-to-market strategies specifically for B2B companies. And there was a lot of data there that kind of came bubbling to the surface regarding live chat. Tell us a little bit about this report, kind of set the stage for what you guys were looking for, and then we'll jump into some of the specific findings from there.
Yeah. So it started out as us just trying to understand where B2B companies were and their kind of evolution of their go-to-market. I think in an age where software is somewhat easy to replicate, I'm not saying that I could personally do it. I'm not an engineer, but in theory, you could acquire the resources to build software that could replicate, software at a fairly fast pace. Like one of our beliefs is that your go-to-market is an area where you could be very easily disrupted today. And so we kind of went out to study whether or not companies were starting to make changes to their go-to-market to adapt to the way that people shop and buy. And of course, unsurprisingly, if you believe that making it easy to do business is really important, live chat was a very big part of that survey. And we learned a lot about what companies were doing with live chat. And, live chat being a way that you can immediately connect, and it makes it really easy to connect with a company. But what we kind of found when we actually started looking at the data was that it really exposed a lot of flaws in the ways that, companies had organized themselves and the processes they created over time. Because users, they don't really care who they're chatting with. They don't care what page they're on. They don't care, if they're in your software or on your website. Or on Facebook Messenger. Like they just have a question, and it could be that they're an existing customer. It could be that they are someone interested in buying your software. It could be that they just want to learn about who you are, and they're very early. We just kind of found that, we and a lot of other businesses had put a lot of, rules and processes and walls and tried to slice and dice our audiences in this really sophisticated way. It just didn't align with the way that people actually, wanted to interact with us.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of examples here within the last week, both, myself and our director of operations at Sweetfish coming up with questions while we were in the HubSpot CRM. And, he mentioned to me, hey, I've been using the chat feature to find some things out as we've been tweaking processes and optimizing our own CRM. And he mentioned, hey, you should go there first because I've found that to be the quickest way to get a response. So one of the things that we discussed a little bit before this interview, Jon, was you guys have actually been leaning into on-site chat a little bit more, and some surprising numbers for your team there at HubSpot, even in some of the things that have come out of that in engagement and tweaks to your strategy in other platforms like email. Tell us a little bit about what you guys have been seeing since you kind of took a look at this data and have tried to apply some of it internally.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a couple things that I think we have learned over the past year and a half as we've really tried to evolve our go-to-market to really align with customer expectations. And so you mentioned email, so I'll actually kind of start with email. Email, one of the oldest and most trustworthy digital channels, obviously changing a lot. I personally, email is not dead by any means. We see a ton of great success with email, but email's changing a lot, right? I mean, I don't get a lot of emails from my friends anymore. Maybe it's that I don't have a lot of friends anymore. That's actually possible.
We'll take that with a grain of salt. Sure.
I'm in my mid-30s now, and so maybe that's just the way it is, and no one ever told me. But no, I mean, most of my friends and my personal communication comes via messaging of some kind, and so obviously that leads me to be a little nervous as a marketer about email. And so one of the things we did at HubSpot last year was we kind of said like, wow, because open rates and click rates have been modestly declining over the past year or two, we've really increased our volume to maintain our click-throughs. So, we set a goal. We said, what if we just think about this entirely differently? And what if we just really dramatically reduce our email volume? So we went through a journey over a couple of months of reducing our email volume about 50%. And we saw pretty incredible results. So, as expected, you would see higher engagement from the people that you're emailing because you are cutting out a bunch of people who are somewhat unengaged. But we also saw that kind of by decreasing the frequency, we were getting more volume actually to our website from email, right? To the destinations we were emailing people about. So we're just seeing a much more healthy, engaged group of subscribers to our email. We were sending them better content because we didn't have to send content as often. And it was just really powerful for us. And so I think that was just a really good example of how, as a company, you can actually, if you treat prospects better, if you treat customers better, you actually may even also get better results for your business.
So tell us a little bit more there, Jon, before we move into some of these other findings. So you mentioned you decreased email send volume by 50%, and that was a combination of culling the list down to the most engaged folks, but also decreasing the frequency that you were hitting that list at the same time.
That's right. Okay.
Awesome.
We took both tactics there. And again, what we kind of found was, by decreasing your frequency there, you obviously, I feel like personally, there's a lot of companies that I get email from, and a lot of, media companies in particular that I get email from that I'm like, oh, I really want to read this. I know this is good, but if the frequency starts piling up, it just becomes a lost cause for me. We really tried to capitalize on that phenomenon and say like, hey, we want people to really read this when we send it. So by decreasing that frequency, it really helped people psychologically stay ahead and feel like they had the space to actually read our content.
That's really interesting to me. It seems like there's a two-sided benefit there. You're giving people, more mental bandwidth to engage with you, and you're also giving your team more time to come up with better content. So I find that very interesting. One of the things that we touched on earlier, as I mentioned, one of my recent experiences, live chat with HubSpot specifically, came out of this idea of speed. And in the blog post that you wrote that kind of distilled some of this data as well, you mentioned that, there is, we are dealing obviously with more impatient buyers. We expect information quickly. I think you mentioned 2/3 of buyers expect a response within 10 minutes, no matter what functional area they're trying to engage with. But this idea of live chat, meeting customers where they are and reducing friction isn't necessarily all about speed. Tell us some of the things you guys found there and, some of the key takeaways in this area, Jon.
Yeah. So, I think that the notion of speed, I think, as a marketer who has responsibility for implementing our systems and our communication systems at HubSpot, I kind of find this data a little bit unfair, right? Like I kind of look at it and I'm like, that's crap, right? Like, how am I supposed to do that? Like,
right.
If you think about the ability to connect a lead and a sales rep and get a response from that rep within 10 minutes, like that's kind of crazy, right? Like that's, it's kind of almost unrealistic. It feels when you think about how complex it is to pull some of this stuff off. But what we're finding and seeing in the data is that there's a set of companies, Lyft and Amazon and Netflix, that have set the bar for what speed and personalization look like. Mm-hmm. It kind of doesn't matter that we are in a different industry or, we have a more complex go-to-market and they should understand that. Mm-hmm. Like, it just doesn't matter. Customers just expect it now. And because of that, they've set this, expectation. And again, our data said basically, 2/3 of people expected a response from a sales rep within 10 minutes or a response from marketing within 10 minutes. And follow-on data from that basically showed that those people were less interested in buying from companies that they didn't hear back from right away. Mm-hmm. And what was kind of scary was we also surveyed this group of marketing and sales leaders about how long lead rotation took at their companies. And only 12% of companies said they could successfully rotate a lead accurately within an hour. Mm-hmm. Right. And so now you get this huge disconnect between people expecting a response in 10 minutes and companies saying like, well, no, I got to figure out who the right rep is and I got to go through a process to rotate that. Mm-hmm. And so, it kind of leads us to feel that, whoever's available is better than whoever's right. That's a concept that we are, trying to embrace at HubSpot. We're trying to help people connect with someone who can help them, who can sell to them, right away instead of really holding lead ownership sacred.
Today's growth story is about one of the world's largest cloud cybersecurity firms. Their challenge? To build and execute a global demand generation strategy. Fortunately, this firm tackled their challenge by joining forces with a marketing partner that delivered a dynamic display campaign that was aligned to the sales and marketing efforts of target accounts. The results? The cybersecurity firm saw a 120% increase in their global display click-through rate. And here's the big one. They generated $39 in their pipeline for every $1 spent on predictive display. So what kind of partner can deliver these results? MRP Prolytics. MRP Prolitics is an insights-powered account-based marketing platform with streaming predictive analytics baked into its core. Integrating multi-channel ABM execution on these insights, MRP Prolitics triggers display, email, direct mail, and global inside sales in real time, helping the largest marketing departments in the world deliver the right message to their customers at just the right time. Can MRP Prolitics get similar results for you? Probably. Find out by visiting mrpfd.com or click the link in the episode description of this interview. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. One of the things I saw, you mentioned this disconnect of, buyers wanting 10 minutes, companies saying, hey, we need at least an hour. Obviously, there's a big 50-minute gap there. One of the other gaps I think you guys uncovered was, people want to be able to communicate with whatever functional role they're trying to reach, marketing, sales, customer service. But most companies are only allowing one of those functional groups access to live chat. And so there's, again, a disconnect of wanting to reach multiple people, but only, having one channel to reach one individual on the team or one group of people within the organization, right?
That's right. We found about 45% of companies, the service team is the only team on chat. About 40% the marketing team is the only team on chat. 10% sales team, and the rest was kind of was other teams there. And what we found was that, like, by having a single team focused on that, there was only one objective that was actually being accomplished, and that leaves buyers with very unsatisfied, I think, with the experience that they're really getting. And so, one of our findings at HubSpot over the past few months is, we used to have, a chat team that worked primarily on our website. And that chat team was in the sales organization. And the premise was, hey, if you're on our website, like, you probably want to chat about a sales question you have. And then, as you noted, in our free products, we have chat available to help people get set up and answer questions about those free products. And we had that team kind of staffed out of the services org. But when we dug into the data around what type of questions people were asking, we were getting tons of questions on our website about our products and about our free products. And we were getting a ton of questions from existing customers. And meanwhile, in app, we were seeing lots of people had questions about whether it was right to buy and other questions like that. They're more appropriate for the sales team. And so, there's different ways to solve this problem if you're a B2B marketer. One is to actually go down a path of trying to consolidate those teams. And that's the path that we're going down as HubSpot. We're trying to create a more generalist team, cross-trained on both sales and product support. And we think that's going to work really well for us based on our initial pilots around that. But you can also create, shared goal alignment. You can create, cross-team training. You can, attempt to execute a well-done handoff between teams over chat. I mean, most chat software enables you to hand off to someone, but, I would say that every handoff you do creates more friction in the customer experience. And so it's a really risky strategy to start going down a path of saying, well, we're going to hand people off. Things get lost. People aren't there. It's just, I think it's good to take a lot of inspiration around live chat from, the telephone customer service experience, if you will. And it's literally the number one thing people find annoying about a service process is, the being on hold is number one. And the second thing is having to repeat information that they've already shared with someone.
Yeah, I can speak with personal experience. I would agree with that. I'd fall in that camp if I were surveyed.
So, handoffs add friction and really continue to propagate kind of information silos, which I think is pretty dangerous in a world where customers expect such a quick and personalized response.
Tell us a little bit more about that topic there that you touched on, Jon, of information silos, because I think, there was some information in the data you shared from the report about, how buyers are connecting with organizations on multiple different channels. And so if there's information siloed in disconnected systems, it really makes it tough to, one, provide a united front, and also, for those handoffs to be smooth as well, right?
Yeah. So, the data, similar to what I was talking about with the 10-minute response, you look at the data as someone, like me, or I think probably everyone listening to this podcast who's responsible for executing all this stuff. And you're kind of like, how am I going to pull that off? So the data we found was basically that, consumers want to communicate with companies through 13 different channels. And that kind of held up across sales, marketing, and service inquiries. And there were some really interesting data points within it. We found that almost a quarter of people surveyed were interested in connecting with a sales rep over Facebook Messenger, for instance. And, you look at data like that and you're like, wow, like, am I enabling my reps to communicate on Facebook Messenger? Have that integrated into my CRM in a way that I actually could, track and manage that sales process effectively? We also saw, interestingly, around, marketing inquiries, we saw a third of people wanted to engage directly through self-service, and I think that 10 years ago would have been much, much lower. So we're seeing this real rise of people who want to kind of do it all themselves. But so you see these 13 different channels that you need to support, and the idea of stitching them all together into a consistent experience is pretty daunting. I think it really brings up the need for a great CRM combined with software that provides more of a unified inbox type environment. HubSpot has just recently launched software to do this called HubSpot Conversations, which is free, but there's a lot of other apps out there also that do similar things that kind of create a unified view of all your customer communications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Jon, we're talking about, the ability to try and address, speed that buyers want, different channels they want to communicate on, how we stitch all that together, how we meet their immediate response needs. Obviously there are software tools, but from a strategic perspective, you guys have mentioned, changing up what you guys have done in different channels like email, leaning into live chats more. I would love for you to share with, a couple of things, as we've shared some of these challenges and kind of, some of our audience probably sitting there thinking, well, what's a marketer to do these days? What are a couple of strategies or takeaways you would leave with our audience today of things to be thinking about from a strategic perspective with all these things and all of this data in mind today?
Yeah. Well, I guess my first big push to everyone and to all the listeners is to really, if the complexity within your go-to-market is going to exist around all of the different communication channels that your customers want to communicate on and all the different ways that they want to engage, shop, and buy, then you have to strip that complexity out of your go-to-market. I think that when I think about every different team you add that has different routing rules, and every different segment you add to your sales team, and every different qualification rule you put in place in order to get someone passed to a human being, like the more you are adding complexity and slowing things down. And so I feel like customers, because of their expectations around how they want to communicate with us and how well we are able to triage that, like they've kind of forced our hand with the rest of it. Like we don't have a lot of options now, but to be the champions of simplification within our businesses, to really try and streamline our internal processes and get rid of some of the kind of 1990s thinking around how to stack rack more sales reps into different segments and territories, and how to do the same exact thing within your support organization for all the different tiers and levels of support and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that simplicity and the fact that people are going to buy the way that they want to buy. They're going to engage the way they want to engage. And so, the overall strategy of making it simple to do business and to reach someone on your team that can provide an answer quickly, I think is the underlying strategy that I walk away from this conversation with. Jon, thank you so much for being on the show again. I really appreciate you sharing some of these insights. A lot of good data here. If anyone would like to follow up with you, ask more questions about this report, or just stay connected with you, what would be the best way for them to reach out or go about doing that?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I would love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on this and your experience at your business. My Twitter handle is Jon Dick, no H in John, JONDICK. So that'd be a great way.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Jon. Really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation, sir.
Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency at no cost. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.